Hi guys, welcome back to another day of Romeo and Juliet. Today we are going to be starting Act 2. Act 2 starts off with its own prologue and then a very short scene where Romeo's friends are trying to find him after the party. So at the end of Act 1, if you remember, Romeo and Juliet meet at the party. They fall in love very quickly, and then they realize who the other person is, and they realize what a huge problem that's going to be, because even though Romeo already liked a Capulet with Rosaline, this is the Capulet's daughter. This is Juliet. This isn't a cousin. So he's in a lot of trouble now, being in love with Juliet. So after the party, he decides he's going to go back to the Capulet mansion to talk with Juliet a little bit more and to see her again, and we will see how that goes. Before we do, though, I just want to show you guys a couple of things. The first thing I want to show you is our EQ for the day. As we read the scenes, our EQs are pretty much going to be how does an author develop characters through interactions with others in a drama, because that's what we're going to be focusing on as we read these interactions. And then also, how does the dialogue between characters provoke decisions? Because we're going to be seeing a lot of choices being made, especially in this scene, based on how these two characters are interacting with each other. This video is probably going to be a long one because the scene is quite long, and there's a lot of stuff I just want to point out and I want to explain. So if you would like to read the scene first, as always, you don't necessarily need to watch these videos. You can just read the scenes and follow along on myshakespeare.com and look at the comments there and read the modern translations there. But it is nice for me to read the scenes because I do love this play so much. So I'm just going to keep on doing it. So if you go to myshakespeare.com, if you're just logging on, what you can do if if we're logging on, we're no longer in Act 1 as we see here, you just go up to Play menu, and then you can select whatever scene we're on at that moment. So for Act 2, we'll read the prologue real quick, and then we'll move into Act 2, Scene 2, since Act 2, Scene 1 is just his friends trying to find him. Okay, so again, here we have 14 lines. If we follow along, we're going to see that the rhyme scheme follows the sonnet rhyme scheme, and that it's all going to have the iambic pentameter rhythm, but we're not going to necessarily break that down for this prologue since we already did that for the play's prologue. We're just going to see kind of what's being set up for Act 2. Okay, so it says, "Now old desire doth in his deathbed lie, and young affection gapes to be his heir." Okay, so now the person who Romeo used to like, that affection for that person is dead. It's in its deathbed and it's lying there. And now a new affection, something that's young, it's just started, is becoming its heir, meaning it's taking its place. "That fair for which love groaned for and would die, with tender Juliet matched is now not fair." So meaning that beautiful Rosaline that Romeo was so upset about, now he sees that when he puts her next to Juliet, she's not fair anymore. She's not somebody who he likes anymore. "Now Romeo is beloved and loves again." So let's remember that with Rosaline, she didn't want him. She had other plans for her life, so she didn't like him back. It was an unrequited love, meaning it was one-sided. Now Romeo is loved back. So when you are loved back by somebody who you like, that intensifies that feeling. So let's keep that in mind because the next scene that we read is going to seem very intense for people who just met and talked maybe for 5 minutes, and most of that was talking about kissing each other, not getting to know each other. Alike bewitched by the charms of looks, meaning he's bewitched by Juliet's beauty, but to his foe supposed he must complain, and she steal love's sweet bait from fearful hooks. Meaning, but he's considered to be a foe, she's considered to be his foe, and so their love is going to be complicated. Being held a foe, meaning an enemy, he may not have access to breathe such vows as lovers use to swear, and she as much in love, her means much less, to meet her new beloved anywhere. So meaning, even though they love each other, because there is that hatred between the families, it's going to be really hard for them to see each other. It's going to be really hard for him to have access to see her, but it's going to be even harder for her, because she doesn't go anywhere aside from church, which we'll see being used later. But passion lends them power, time means to meet, tempering extremities with extreme sweet. Okay, so basically, but their love for each other, their passion is going to make it work. And we're going to see how they make it work in kind of extreme ways. All right, so then moving on into Act 2, Scene 1, like I said, his friends are just trying to find him, and what he's done here is they're outside of the Capulet mansion, but he finds a wall that leads to the Capulet orchard, and he climbs that wall and goes into the garden before his friends are able to see him. So they're like, Romeo, Romeo, where are you? Where are you? Come on. Rosaline's here. You want to come out and see her? And they start kind of teasing him with like Rosalind's name and like her beauty and stuff like that. And Romeo never comes out. So Benvolio then just decides, he's not going to come out. Everything we're doing is in vain, meaning it's pointless. So let's just go. And then the two friends go. And then Act 2, Scene 2, this is our scene we're going to read today, starts off with Romeo kind of responding to his friends under his breath. He's away from them. They've gone, so he's not talking to them. He's kind of just talking out loud, and he says, he jests at scars that never felt a wound, meaning Mercutio specifically is making fun of him for things like being in love, and Mercutio's never been in love, so like, how can he make fun of me for doing something that he's never experienced, right? But then there's a window coming from, the outside of the Capulet mansion, and he sees light coming through. So this actually, if you are familiar with Romeo and Juliet in any way, this is our famous balcony scene. This is where Juliet is out on the balcony and Romeo is just below, and they're talking to each other about their love for each other, at the balcony. Okay. So the light comes on and he goes, but soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. So again, remember guys, Act 1, Scene 1, I told you guys that Romeo was compared to an artificial night, because he's locking himself away in his room, and he's being really moody and just consumed in darkness. And I told you then to keep that in mind because Romeo is going to often be compared to things that are dark or nighttime, stuff like that. Well, as a contrast, Juliet is going to often be compared to things in the daytime. So here we see him saying literally Juliet is the sun. It's a metaphor. She's not literally the sun, but he's comparing her to the sun because she's so bright and so beautiful. So keep that in mind. We're going to see a little bit more of that as we continue through this scene. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief, that thou, her maid, art far more fair than she. Be not her maid, since she is envious. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off. So now Juliet actually appears, and he's like, oh my gosh, it's really her. It is my lady. Oh, it is my love. Oh, that she knew she were. She speaks, yet she says nothing. What of that? Meaning, like, she's sitting there and she has, like, thoughts on her face. You know, like when you can tell that somebody's thinking something and somebody wants to say something, but they're not going to. That's kind of what he's talking about here. Her eye discourses. I will answer it. Oh, I am too bold. 'Tis not to me she speaks. Two of the fairest stars in all the heaven, having some business, do entreat her eyes, to twinkle in their spheres till they return. So here he's saying that she's talking to the stars, like she's looking up at the stars, and they are more interesting to Juliet than he is at this point. But remember, Romeo's often compared to things in nighttime, which includes stars. So here he's kind of foreshadowing that she's actually thinking about him, but he just doesn't know it yet. What if her eyes were there, they in her head? The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars, as daylight doth a lamp. Her eyes in heaven would through the airy regions stream so bright that birds would sing and think it were not night. So here he's saying basically, like, what if her eyes and the stars change places? Then those stars would be, like, shamed. They wouldn't be bright at all because her cheeks and her face are so bright. Her beauty is just so bright. And all the stars in the heaven would be outshone by her eyes, and everybody would think it was daylight because they're so bright and beautiful. See how she leans her cheek upon her hand, so she's sitting there like this. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch thy cheek. Or that cheek, sorry. And then Juliet just says, like, she just kind of sighs, and she's like, "Ay me." And Romeo's underneath, and remember, she has no idea at this point that he's there. He's being a creeper in her garden. He's just, like, hiding in the bushes and in the orchard, which, you know, is like trees. And he says, she speaks. Oh, speak again, bright angel, for thou art as glorious to this night, being o'er my head as a winged messenger of heaven, unto the white upturned wandering eyes of mortals that fall back to gaze on him, when he bestrides the lazy puffing clouds and sails upon the bosom of the air. So here he's just saying in a long-winded way, speak again, you're an angel, right? And then probably the most famous line, maybe in all of Shakespeare, but definitely in Romeo and Juliet. Juliet then says, "Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?" Okay, and this is a very, very misunderstood line, because to us, if we're saying, "Wherefore art thou, Romeo?" that sounds like we're saying, "Where are you, Romeo?" And then the audience would be like, "Girl, what you doing? He's right there. Just, like, look down." But actually, in Elizabethan England, wherefore, if you see here, actually means why. So why are you Romeo? Why do you have to be Romeo? Like, deny thy father and refuse thy name. Or, if thou wilt not, be but sworn, my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet. So here she's going to start talking about the problem with him having the name Romeo Montague and her issue with it. So he's still underneath, and he's like, shall I hear more, or shall I speak at this? He's thinking out loud. And she just keeps talking. She says, "'Tis but thy name that is my enemy. It's just your name that's my enemy. It's not you, it's just your name. Thou art thyself, though not a Montague." What's Montague? It is nor hand, nor foot, nor arm, nor face, nor any other part belonging to a man. Oh, be some other name. What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So if we called a rose, cow flower, it would still smell beautiful, right? So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owes without that title. Romeo, doff thy name, and for that name which is no part of thee take